uh, uh, communication philosophies of the Eastern and Western world. This book I would consider as my lifetime project, which I have been conceptualizing for the last 15 years. It took 4 years to write, and it was under the publication process for 2 years. So this book is an outcome of nearly 20 years of work, including the thought processes, rethinking, and attendant processes. Hope you can see the screen. Ananda wanted me to talk about this particular work, which was published by Peter Lang last month. It engages with the domains of spatialities, materialities, and communication in South India. Particular topic, I need to introduce yourself to the state of affairs in my field or discipline, that is communication. Communication across the world as an academic discipline owes its origin to the politics surrounding Second World War, the politics of Cold War, particularly whatever happened between the Allies and Nazis during the Second World War, had a tremendous impact on the psyche of American academics, particularly those who are working in social sciences, in disciplines such as political science, social psychology, etc. They were keen to work on the propaganda victories of Nazis, Hitler and his communication team members. So on the one hand, the Allies they didn't know how to use the media to their advantage. So they started pumping grants to American universities to get some answers. When I say they, it includes the State Department, other wings of the American government, particularly the State Department. So a number of scholars, including sociologists, political scientists, social psychologists, literature scholars, they started getting these grants, and they started working on these projects funded by the State Department. Eventually, these projects resulted in departments of communication. And eventually, once the Cold War started, these departments of communication and the scholars who are working there, in turn, they also started getting grants from the State Department to work to the advantage of the American government. So many scholars ventured out in third world countries like India, Egypt, and other countries And as a consequence, we had slowly the emergence of communication departments in these countries as well, which were simply following the North American model of engaging with communication, that is mass communication, and mass communication that is rooted in the logic of knowing the effects of what media are doing to people, not what people are doing with media. So since 1940s, by whatever I mean by this North American tradition, the scholars who are bound by this tradition, they are particularly interested in the effects tradition of the SMCR model. Again, a North American import. We relate to communication as a process involving few stages. One is source, second is channel, third is message, fourth is receiver. And the fourth stage also involves how the receiver is influenced or is receiving the effects. In the North American tradition, media are an important element or the most important constituent of the communication universe. But in my logic, mass-mediated communication or mass communication or any mediated communication by technologies, institutions represent only a fraction of whatever is transacted in the name of communication by human beings. So there has been this ongoing distortion of the field and discipline of communication by this mass media centric approach to culture specific communication theories. We don't teach subjects such as human communication. We don't teach cultural studies. We don't teach subjects which involve human beings, which involve us, which involve culture, which involve society, etc., etc. We teach and train students to be journalists, to be media professionals. Simply put, bluntly put, we are suppliers of manpower to the media industry. And I see here a great lack or a huge basket of missed opportunities. I see here that we have done great disservice to the society and culture of India and its regions by not engaging with cultural communication. In 2016, I started a few pedagogical experiments when I was in University of Madras. One of these goes by the term class outside class. We had a series of evening classes meant for providing alternative perspectives on communication studies, multidisciplinary approaches to communication studies in a bilingual mode. And one of the lecture series I started engaged with the fundamentals of communication, at least the 4 fundamentals of communications, 4 important context of communication, any communication. What are these 4 important contexts? One is space, another is time, another is sound, the 4th is light. The lecture series I started in 2016 focused on these 4 key contexts: space, we have been engaging with journalism and communication in a formal way in India. Until 2016, these formal engagements in the name of journalism and communication studies always meant mass communication centric approach. We never had a holistic approach to communication studies. This book, this engagement with spatialities, materialities, and communication in South India is an outcome of my concern that during my lifetime, something should be changed. If not at the national level, at least at the level where I have been working. At least I should convey this so that we can see a different kind of engagement in the field and discipline of communication in the next 100 years. So that's a background. Quickly, as we have very little time, what I mean by spatialities and materialities of communication can be stated in a very simplistic manner or can be stated in a very complex philosophical manner as well. I said space, time, sound, light are important context of communication. These contexts of communication are more vital, more important in the case of human communication and culture-specific communication. They are also important in the case of mass communication. But this book seeks to balance spatialities and materialities in provide an introduction to the historical trajectories of spatialities and materialities of communication in South India by engaging with ancient philosophies of communication in South India. The first chapter, for instance, that is the introductory chapter, seeks to provide an introduction to the spatialities and materialities of communication down the centuries in Tamil Nadu, starting with the Sangam period. Now, this section provides a good introduction to modes of communication which are no longer with us. Okay. Now, during Sangam period, this section argues that institutionalized mode of communication, which started taking roots during the Pallava period, the later Chola period, and consolidated by the Nayaka period. So during the Sangam period, we had non-institutionalized mode of communication, by which I mean that there were no big state institutions mediating communication for human beings in their private or public spaces. This started changing once dynasties took shape, and with the Pallava, Chola, Pandya, and Chera dynasties, we had the emergence of institutionalized modes of communication of the native kind. With the onset of colonial period, we had the transformation of this native institutionalized mode of communication with the influence of printing, steam operated transport mechanisms, building of telegraphy lines, and all those things. So these colonial modes of communication had the advantage as well as the disadvantage of these technologies. Accordingly, the colonial modes of communication changed because of the import of technologies and also the import of certain cultures along with this technology. That's why we are keen to refer to terms such as print culture. Printing arrives on the western and eastern coast around 16th century. Come 2078, we will be observing the 500th anniversary of printing in Tamil Nadu and South India. So these engagements with printing, with the already existing modes of oral communication, has disturbed greatly the individual as well as institutionalized negotiations of communication. I normally give this example. What happens when there is a possibility of wedding in our family? We are very keen to invite our close relatives. We are very particular if they happen to be close relatives. We are very particular of visiting their houses in person, inviting them in person by handing over the printed invitation. So two things are involved communication-wise. One is visiting them in person, inviting them orally, and inviting them with a printed invitation card. If we fail to do one of these, either inviting them orally or inviting them with a printed invitation card, then it is not seen as a proper invitation, proper behavior. It's seen as a disrespectful behavior. So printed invitation alone would not suffice in a oral culture. So there is this ongoing contestation between print and orality. So these are some of the points argued by the first chapter, introduction. It also provides an understanding of how the ancient cities of Pugar, that is also known as Kaveri Pupantinam, which was destroyed by the tsunami during ancient times, and Madurai, another ancient city. What were the modes of communication in these two cities? One, a coastal, cosmopolitan, international harbor, that is Pugar or Kaveri Pumpattinam. Another, a traders city, Madurai, inland city, Madurai. So what were the institutionalized and non-institutionalized modes of communication in this city? Thirdly, the first chapter also anchors the important communication context made possible by South Indian architecture. So this is what I mean by materiality of communication. A South Indian traditional architecture provides a material and spatial context of communication. Now, if you are able to visit any South Indian village where these traditional houses are still around, you would find certain architectural elements. Two important architectural elements are the front yard known as Thinnai. Thinnai belongs both to the public space of roads and the private space of the house. It is meant for passers-by, travelers, and strangers. They are strangers until they come and sit on the Thinnai. They become somebody else. They are transformed as close acquaintances or friends or non-strangers. Once they come and sit on the Thinnai and ask for water, ask for food, which the members of the household are supposed to provide without asking any question. This was the practice until last century. In Tamil Nadu, in South India, until the advent of Vijayanagara Empire, two acts were punishable acts. These include selling food and water in public places. No individual or group can sell water or food in public places. There were no highway hotels, there were no restaurants, and how travelers had their food or where they stayed. Even today, if you pass through the highways in South India, you would find many ancient mandapams on the roadside. These were having their own kitchen. They had their own security system to help the travelers to have their food, keep their valuables in safety. So the next important architectural element is in the house that is known as Mutram or the courtyard, where the courtyard is surrounded by pathways on four sides. The courtyard receives sunlight, rainwater, air, everything. All the natural elements enter the house. The men folk and women folk sit around the courtyard to chat, enter into conversations. These two important communication contexts were built into the architecture in South India. These days, these houses are being demolished, and we have the compounded houses where we have alienated ourselves from the public spaces. So there are no threshold spaces like Thinnai now. So these are also introduced in the first chapter. The second chapter introduces how materialities and spatialities transform communication since very earliest time, meaning prehistoric time. And what happened when the early human beings started painting on the rocks in South India. So we have many rock art sites in Tamil Nadu and South India. These are introduced in this chapter. This chapter also engages with the medium of palm manuscripts, how we should take seriously the medium of palm manuscripts, epigraphy, stone sculptures, and how they are different from other ancient media such as copper plates. The third chapter engages with colonial contestations, the spatial and material remainders of colonial contestations and encounters. Contestations are where antipathies are employed by both the parties, the colonial rulers and the natives. Encounters are where both the colonial rulers and the natives enter into a sort of harmonious relationships. One important person this chapter introduces is Sir Thomas Munro. The natives of Madras Presidency communicated with Munro, and Thomas Munro communicated with the natives through this mode of encounter. Now, encounter is differentiated from recognition. Encounter is not recognition by a few philosophers such as Deleuze, as well as by Foucault. When we recognize something, we are not changing ourselves. We are not able to change what we recognize. When we encounter something, a new truth possibility emerges. So that is outcome of encounter. Sir Thomas Munro was encountering natives, and as a result, both the natives and the colonial administrator were getting to see new realities which could not be seen by other colonial administrators. The first chapter engages with whatever was happening in 18th century Pondicherry through the diaries of Anandarangam Pillai, who was a Dubash. Section 2 engages with spatialities and materialities of communication in everyday lives. In this book, by materiality, I mean few things. One is materiality is material. Say, if I am seated on a wooden chair, I'm using a wooden table. So wood is the material. So the physical materiality is defined by the material that is wood. This is one kind of materiality. This is very naive kind of materiality. This is not to be taken seriously. We all know the obvious difference between a wooden table and a plastic table. What I'm more interested in is the materiality of a different kind. When we enter our house, after every working day, after spending the entire day in the office. When we enter our house, we are interpellated by the material environment of our drawing room or hall or the rooms of the house. If certain things are missing in the room, certain things are not around, the way we are incorporated, the way we can be interpellated would be different. The most ordinary example we can think of is we are carrying our mobiles in our trousers every day. If at any particular moment we find the mobile is missing, what goes missing is the invisible relationship we add with the mobile. So our relationship with material things in our house or in our office is invisible. They are not putting great demands on us. We are not putting great demands on them in this cultivation of relationship. It is more an invisible relationship, but this invisible relationship is required by all of us because it provides what Anthony Giddens calls as ontological security, basis of ontological security. A newborn baby seeks ontological security in the presence of the mother. All of us are behaving like newborn babies vis-a-vis our relationship with these material objects, particularly things that cannot be dispensed with, our money purse, our mobile phones, etc. We often check whether they are with us, isn't it? The third notion of materiality is provided by Karl Marx. Karl Marx said that materiality in the case of Greek sculpture. So he gives this example of materiality of Greek sculpture. He says the content for Greek sculpture is Greek mythology. So the materiality of Greek sculpture is defined by Greek mythology. When I extend this logic of Karl Marx to the South Indian temples, which I refer very often in this book, the sculptures, the temple towers, and all the material objects in the temple space are having one content, and that content is materiality in the logic of Karl Marx, and that content is sourced from mythologies. In the case of Greek sculpture, the content is sourced from Greek mythology. In the case of Indian temple sculptures, the content is sourced from Indian mythologies. This content, according to Marx, stands in as the materiality, not the material which is used by the sculptor to give shape to his thoughts. It is not the granite, the material. It is not the wood, the material. In the Karl Marx logic of materiality, content is defining materiality. It is not the wood or granite or something else. So these notions of materialities and spatialities can also be used in our engagements in everyday lives. How these are transformed in the case of marginalized communities in cities like Chennai. How these are in the course of cultural politics of sound, music, noise in South India. We all know that there has been an ongoing politics of noise, sound, music across the world, particularly in South India. there has always been a contestation between classical music and people's music. And what are the divergent materialities and spatialities which are at play in the cultural politics of music and dance? How these materialities and spatialities are affecting the communication of fishermen in their everyday lives. And what has happened in the city of Madras? In the month of August, the middle class citizens of Madras are very fond of observing Madras Day. Is it that, can we justify this celebration when many activists want this to be observed as a Black Day? So these are some of the questions this chapter raises when it takes a political economy approach to the study of space in Madras, Chennai over the last 350 plus. One important domain which is filled with many possibilities, more possibilities than this chapter outlines, is related to changing food cultural practices of South Indians. This chapter seeks to provide some understanding of the contested spaces of food cultures in South India. The third section engages with public communication, materialities, and spatialities, how our rights to movement, our right to public communication have been fractured in Tamil Nadu over the years, how to engage with what I call as discordant notes of spatialities and materialities of music in South India, which is an extension of the earlier chapter in section 2. What is in a beach is a question raised by chapter 12. What Marina Beach has been a site of contestation between local fishermen, local judiciary, local government since 19th century. Since 19th century, beach in this city in Chennai is sought to be appropriated by the local rulers as a site of beauty. In the face of opposition from the local fishermen who see it not only as a site of beauty, but as a source of livelihood. What is happening in the case of caste-mediated communication? We have been seeing for the past few days discussion on the horrible attack on a Dalit schoolboy in Tirunelveli district by his own classmates who belong to the upper caste. So this chapter seeks to engage with what happens to the oppressed bodies when they die. So there was this, not one, but 3 films on the medieval Dalit saint Nandanar. So this chapter chooses the last major film on Nandanar, as well as one incident in Nagapattinam district, where 2 elderly Dalit man and women, husband and wife, when they died, their bodies were not permitted to go through the streets of the caste Hindus. the relatives could not perform the last rites. So this chapter engages with the issues of corporeality, space, communication, and caste. Then development communication is one important section where we can draw a different conclusion about this particular subdiscipline which emerged out of Cold War politics. Development communication is an imposition on, in my opinion, by USA in particular. So how the Green Revolution was imposed by USA mediated policies, and what are the materialities which came to affect the local farmers as a consequence, and where the organic farm movement is heading now. The last section deals with media materialities. Media materialities are not ignored in this book, which wants to have a break with the North American approach. Whether we like them or not, media are one of the social institutions. So this section engages with materialities and spatiality of television in Tamil Nadu, filmic spaces, materiality of memes and marginalized youth. There has been this ongoing discussion, research by academics on the counterculture by youth in North Madras. We have been hearing terms like such as pullingo, etc. This chapter, how social media are leveraged by youth of marginalized communities in Chennai. Mobile phone materialities are another important domain. Chapter 18 engages with the same. The last two chapters, in my opinion, are very important. Chapter 19 engages with materialities and spatialities of photographic cultures in Tamil Nadu. It provides a philosophical introduction to get us a different understanding of what happens in the name of wedding photography, what happens in the name of selfie photography. Mostly, these are dealt with in a very functionalist manner in communication classes. We don't teach philosophy of photography. We don't teach philosophy of selfie photography. We can connect them to local philosophies. Understand? So this chapter makes use of the ancient philosophical constructs found in, as well as the philosophical introduction to photography by one of the Frankfurt School scholars, Walter Benjamin, as well as the philosophical notion of darshan or darisanam. So these three philosophical threads are used to engage with issues of wedding photography, issues of selfie photography, etc. The last chapter, of course, is on materialities and spatialities of print cultures in Tamil Nadu. This chapter takes a radical approach to what it sees as print culture. By print, normally, we ignore textual cultures. By print, we include normally books, anything printed, pamphlets, magazines, etc. But scholars who have been studying print cultures normally do not go near printed posters. They don't study graffiti. They don't study political banners. They don't study those works done by painters manually on our bridges, which I call as textual cultures. So print cultures are differentiated from textual cultures in this chapter. And there are any number of textual cultures. So this chapter seeks to go beyond the study of cultures, print cultures rooted in books, magazines, journalism, etc. It wants to engage with things such as what is in a waste paper shop. We have any number of waste paper shops in South India. And what are the materialities and spatialities one finds in the stuff in waste paper shops? What is in a conference volume? This chapter engages with the conference volume of the Second World Tamil Conference and compares it with the conference volume of the First World Tamil Conference in 1966. So that's all from my side, Professor Ananda. If there are questions, I will take it.
Thank you so much, Professor Ravindran. And we can always feel that it's a great work. So I look forward to reading this great journey. As you have said, that it is a 20 years of love, labor, and sadhana. And your exploration, looking at communication itself, beginning with the limits of the post-war and pre-war communication dynamics, and originating in a strategic context, and then imposing that post-war American model across the globe, and the way, as you have helped us to understand, that the way it has been imposed globally. And so therefore, going beyond this immediate North American, what my friend and teacher, Professor Rolf Trio, said, that it is the North Atlantic universalism. And what Ulrich Beck, the German sociology, says, that it is the NATO-like firepower of sociology. So in communication studies, we need this interrogation and really building on historical practices and experiences as you have done, and also different philosophies of it. Like in the same chapter, engaging with Walter Benjamin and the Darsana philosophy, and Deleuze, Marx, Materialities, and our historical realities. So it is a great work. So its significance lies also in another context, that today there is a search for both new epistemologies and ontologies. Now, ontology, our journey with ontology is, of course, at one level what Giddens calls ontological security, but also ontology embodies a ontology of adventure, and so an ontology of realization, an ontology of self-realization, cultural realization, and in a sense of adventure. So therefore, in the communicative field, as you have said, that these two symbols, the Madurai and the port, but these two are not necessarily the same kind of space. The inland space is of a particular kind, where communication is of a particular security kind.
Mm.
But when you come to the sea, so it is the sea, adventuring to the sea, communicating with the sea, and with the sea, the communication with other countries, cultures. So it is also a adventure,
Yeah.
adventure into the unknown.
Yeah.
So therefore, how do we bring the ontological dimension,
Mm.
not only in terms of familiar securities,
Mm.
but also preparing ourselves for the unknown?
Yeah.
And the sea is the symbol of that.
Sure. Sure.
So this is just a one quick thought to think together with your very deep journey. And the other thought is that the speciality and materiality, and that speciality and materiality is also dancing in very creative ways with what can be called as ideals and ideality. And therefore your reference to ideas of life, the Sangam literature, the Tinai, all these ideas, isn't it?
Mm.
These ideas are embodied in speciality and materiality,
Sure.
but they are not confined to that, they are
Mm.
not just bound to that.
Mm.
So therefore, to think about speciality, materiality, and communication, we also need to build the autonomous domain of ideas.
Sure.
Autonomous does not mean that it is not related to speciality and materiality, but that autonomous domain of ideas
Mm.
and its cultivation and sadhana.
Mm.
And for example, ideas as related to spirit in an open way.
Mm.
Hegel talks about spirit, but that spirit soon gets kind of bound to the nation state.
Mm.
But really, the spirit is a free flowing spirit.
Yeah.
So, that free flowing spirit, as it interacts with society and history, but not limited to society and history. So, this is the second point about ideals and ideality, that
Mm.
how do we bring it to understanding speciality and materiality and the communicative practice. The third thing is about related to that would be the whole contemplative dimension,
Mm.
because what has happened is that in modernistic communication, that contemplative dimension has missed.
Yeah.
And but in our South Indian tradition, there are many. You refer to the Dalit saint and the
Mm.
whole traditions of both Alvars and Ayanars,
Mm.
and in fact, it is a contemplative communicative work.
Sure. Sure.
And that contemplative communicative work, that meditative contemplative communicative work, and through the what you mentioned about personal meeting
Mm.
during a wedding invitation, but that is also accompanied by long traditions of people visiting themselves long distance like the saints and
Mm.
sitting together.
Mm.
And in another context, in our forum some time ago, we had a presentation by Professor Banerjee, Debashis Banerjee, and
Mm.
his meditation on the Upanishad. He is saying that the Upanishadic modality of communication has two aspects.
Mm.
One is it is a space and time of
Mm.
intimate language, and maybe the Tinai is a space and time of intimate language, isn't the
Okay.
courtyard? And the other is intuitive language.
Okay.
And so I'm, of course, in South India, both these are deeply co-present, the intimate and the intuitive.
Ah.
And because of our our training of the intuitive, and here very quickly I'm remembering a line from Confucius Analects,
Okay.
where he speaks about poetry. What is poetry? And he's saying that poetic is such that you say one line, you say one line, or I say one line, you
Mm.
can really anticipate what is next to come.
Okay.
So that intimate, intuitive, and the anticipatory, and that anticipatory communication, not just in the spirit of security, ontological security, but anticipatory communication in terms of adventures of cultural awakening and new cultural possibilities that could arise. So these are some of my
Okay.
very
Thank you. Thank you.
provisional
Yeah.
submissions
Okay.
to
Thank you.
your great journey, please.
Yeah. Yeah. One point I would like to highlight about the book is it engages with without any bias, without any prejudice, to where they were born, how they are seen. So we have been engaging with Hegel, we have been engaging with Adorno, thinking that they are from the Western Hemisphere. But this book doesn't. It does not want to make any such distinction. So it wants to have these great minds in one place. And these are some of the names which I have used, their philosophy. In Tamil Nadu, whenever we are made to relate to Sangam literature, we have been told that these were poets. Okay. So in a standard Tamil class, the names of the poets are revealed to us as somebody who is not more than a poet. So they were not seen as scholars, they were not seen as philosophers. So I have a different approach. I engage with this I don't call them poets. So they were scholars and philosophers who need to be put in company with Freud, Adorno, Ornheim, Althusser, Hegel, Horkheimer, Stuart Hall, Marx, Innis, McLuhan, Lefebvre, Williams, Hogarth, Carey, Deleuze, Guattari, Foucault, Kittler, and Miller. Who are these Sangam age philosophers? Alangudi Wanganar, Kaniyan Pungundran, kings like Koperunjolan, Kudapula Viennar, Kundur Kilar Magan, Mangudi Kilar, Mangudi Marudanar, Muranjiyur Mudi Nagaraya, Pereyil Muruvalar, Peyalvar, Tirumular, Tulkapiyar, besides Thiruvarur, Ilangodigal, and the last century philosopher Chidambaram Pillai. So they transformed my approaches to communication studies. In an ideal communication classroom, I would like to engage with these philosophers from the East and West. And that can happen only if you are able to transcend or forget approach. Thank you, Giri.
Yes, thank you so much. And I think this approach is deeply significant, as we do not limit a person just as a poet,
Yeah,
or even just limit Deleuze just as a philosopher, but there is a poetic in him.
Yeah.
So that kind of openness beyond the classificatory,
Yeah.
and is very, very significant. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now I invite questions and comments, and you can kindly make a note, and then towards the end, we will hold our hands. So we have Professor Anand with us, Journal Singh Anand. Sat Sri Akal, Professor Anand. Please do come and share your thoughts. Professor Anand, okay, he's taking some time. Gyan Luigi.
Yes.
Yes, I thank you. Excuse me. Thank
Yeah,
you
yes,
very
please.
much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was, thank you. It was very interesting. I was thinking about the different contexts. I have no particular question in the moment, but I would like now to read the book in order to have more clarity also as regards, for instance, this idea of the mythology, if I have correctly understood, of a Greek mythology as the materials.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that I correctly. So this has struck me, but it is very interesting an idea. As idea, I never thought of it in this way. Therefore, I am really very interested in the book, and I will read the book with great attention.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you
It
very
was
much.
really very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your compliments and thanks for joining. That is one way of leveraging Karl Marx works differently. So normally, those who are into studying Karl Marx, they appropriate him only in a very limited manner. So I want to appropriate whatever Karl Marx says to benefit my understanding of communication, my understanding of materiality and spatiality. So I don't get into the typical Marxist discourse involved, but I'm only interested in certain fragments of his work, which have very many potential to. And one such thread is this thread, which Marx mentions. Content is not content, content is material. Content is material of a different kind. Content is the source of the content. Understand? Now, these days, we hear a lot about content creators. Okay. So without understanding the source of content, the source of content is not the content creator, according to the Marxian wisdom. Okay, it is what emerges out of centuries or millennia old collaboration among minds. So it is very easy to talk about Greek mythology or Indian mythology. Who created Greek mythology or Indian mythology? In a typical Marxist perspective, we have to agree with Marx that Greek or any mythology emerged out of a long drawn collaboration over thousands of years. So no one content creator can take credit for that, as the social media content creators are doing now.
That is so lovely.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that is again very, very important.
Yeah.
Because both Marx and our traditions, they really point to limits of the proprietary and individual ownership. And in a way that the contemporary media, despite many kinds of proprietary control and exclusion, it is moving in that direction.
Yes,
a sense of the commons which resists to be bound in any way.
Yeah.
So therefore, to give a philosophical basis to that, that we can really build upon our traditions of,
Sure.
and we need to bring that knowledge as a lively knowledge, so that we do not feel apologetic.
Yes.
And
We need not.
And that is so, we even do not know that, selling food and selling water was banned, and which really points to that what we should do now, and and a new future. Lovely. So Sonu Kumar, we have the journalist Sonu Kumar with us.
Yeah, please, Sonu Kumar.
सर आपका बड़ा महत्वपूर्ण था। मैं काफी देर से उसे देख रहा था। आपने बहुत विस्तृत रूप से उसके बारे में जानकारी दी और मुझे भी जानने का एक नया अवसर मिला, क्योंकि मैं मास कम्युनिकेशन का छात्र हूं और मास कम्युनिकेशन से संबंधित ही ये सादा
Ananda to translate it for me later. Yeah, please.
Yes, I would do that.
Thank you, sir.
Please.
So Sonu is saying that his heart danced with joy listening to you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm making a poetic translation
Okay,
because he's a student of mass communication
okay.
and he has listened to with not only attention but with his heart's love.
You must be the agent of change in Bihar, Sonu Kumar,
Yes.
to change what the North Americans have implanted in our mind as mass communication, as television studies or as film studies or this studies, no? So in every state or every region in India, we have a huge treasure of native philosophies, native communication philosophies, native communication concepts, which are not taught in the Indian departments of communication and journalism, unfortunately. So that is my concern.
And I hope that there would be possibility to translate this book, for example,
Thank you, thank you.
into Hindi and Tamil, and because this knowledge really needs to go. Okay, now Minati, please.
Thank you, Anantabhai. I
Thank
would
you.
like to first congratulate Professor Gopalan Ravindran for the new book release.
Thank
It
you,
is
ma'am.
really,
Thank you.
it is very wonderful. 20 years of work when you put into something that is like, half lifetime work. And the session was really very enriching.
Yeah.
So I was, enticed by the introduction to read the full book. Looking forward to read that book sometime.
Yeah,
But
sure.
I have very small queries. Like when your title says that is about South India.
Yeah.
South India, you mean the 4 South Indian states or only about Tamil Nadu? Because
No,
I have been
only about Tamil Nadu.
Okay.
Actually, I wanted it as Tamil Nadu, but the publisher suggested South India.
Okay.
When you
So-
publish a book, no, certain things are changed by the publisher.
Okay, so South India, maybe some culture and some practices may be same or
Same,
something
same.
little bit here and there, maybe some locality and things will be little different. So that was my query. And one more query I had, when you say there are 4 pillars of things like space, time, sound, and light, would you
Yes.
explain a little more? And when you say light, is it about a physical light or have you used it metaphorically that the media puts the light on the
No.
incidents on the moon? So that is one query. And as Anantabhai said, about you are talking about print and orality, that has been probably the part of Indian way of inviting or talking some invitation. Now I'm from Odisha. There they use this orality, card as well as supari also. If those 3 things are not there, it is not considered as an invitation. Like we were telling, we were just relating to things.
Yeah.
So there are, I think, probably every chapter can get into a discussion. When I was do all these things, some other time probably, if Anantabhai allows, we can have one more session like
Sure.
And the translation idea was very good. That all the regional mass media students will be benefited and things like that. So this is, I had that little query about that light. And when you say about Thinnai, you have heard about the poetry and all things like Thinnai. But this philosophy was really wonderful, where the both public and private things. For me, it was an eye-opening learning. So thank you so much. You can answer about that light.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ma. Thank you for your observations. So firstly, let me clarify your doubt about the 4 basic elements of communication, including light. It is not used in a metaphorical sense. At the physical analog level, sound, space as space, time as time, and light as light. Okay, now to get you one example, how we are impacted by the global spread of certain cheap technologies of lighting in India. Okay, I am working in a rural university in Tanjavur, and you don't find the same kind of lighting we used to see in cities. Okay. After 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, as in many parts of rural India, the highways and roads are very dark. But these days, the auto rickshaw guys can get very good quality LED lights at a throwaway price. So when I drive on a highway in a rural place like this during night hours, I can't recognize whether the oncoming vehicle is an auto rickshaw or a lorry or bus. Because previously auto rickshaws used to have only one light, center light. Now they have nearly 10 lights on the front. Okay. Communication between two drivers on a public road. This also has to be studied as part of public space communication. Traditionally, we have studied only political communication as a part of public space communication. We don't study how the introduction of LED lighting is affecting public space communication in temple festivals, in religious festivals, in political meetings. The way lights are doing acts of communication have changed after the introduction of these LED lights. Okay, so I don't use these two or four elements metaphorically. These are concrete contexts of communication, in my opinion. And these can be understood better if you have the advantage of knowing local philosophy of space, time, light, and sound. Now, I have a huge regret as a communication teacher. Okay, so since early 80s, I have been a student of communication. 3 years, 44 years. But the regret that I was not doing the right thing, I was not into communication, happened only around early 2000. By then, nearly 20 years have gone. So I have been catching up with what I could not learn. Here, I would like to remind you about another great professor from North America who shared a similar anguish when he was about to retire. His name is James Carey. He writes in one of the important chapters of his famous book published in 1988, Communication as Culture. He starts like this. When he was about to retire, see where he writes, when I wanted to seriously understand what is communication, a wise man suggested, start reading John Dewey. So here was a professor of communication who was also who established quite a few number of departments of communication. When he was about to retire, he says he didn't understand communication, he didn't learn serious study of communication. A friend suggests, start reading John Dewey. I was in a similar position in 2002. So I started reading local philosophies. I started sharpening my knowledge of Tamil. I started reading Tamil literature books, Sangam books. It's very difficult because I am not a Tamil literature student. The terms are very difficult to understand. I have to contact elderly scholars, go after them. If those texts are about philosophy, it is impossible to get the correct meaning. Okay, so I have been doing this for the last 20 years. And if you are from Orissa, if you are from Bihar, if you are from Assam, you have a treasure waiting to be discovered as local philosophy of communication. Just as I am doing in Tamil Nadu, you should be doing in your own regions. If we are not doing,
Sorry,
If-
I lived in Tamil Nadu for 12 years.
Okay, ma. Good to know that. If
So-
if we locals are not taking seriously local philosophy, who else can talk about them? Who else can use them?
So very beautiful. So lot of beautiful invitations to feel enthusiastic about.
Yeah.
And that is the spirit of life, and that is the spirit
Yeah.
that we do not become old,
Yeah.
in the sense that the whole youthfulness.
We must leave
And-
something behind for the next generation.
And before we leave something behind, we would have to live differently with our contemporary.
Sure, sure.
And that is how we pick up treasures from John Dewey and many contemporary and our timely sadhakas and sadhikas. So now, Minati, for your last bit of dancing.
Yeah, thank you. No, I just wanted to share one more line. Like
Okay.
when I said, when I stayed in Tamil Nadu, I mean in Chennai, many of the things today you have described, many things I have learned a bit by observation. I mean, as you said, no, because we can just, I learned Tamil how to speak, but that difficult words, that bombastic words in the literary circle, those things becomes difficult to even understand. Like, or else you can explore little more.
Sure.
But it was very encouraging. So, Anantabhai, can I give a vote of thanks now?
Yes.
Thank you. I, Minati Pradhan, on behalf of Sadhya Sahachakra and Vishwaneedam Center for Asian Blossoming, would like to thank our today's chief speaker, Professor Gopalan Ravindran, for his very enriching presentation. And once more, congratulations for the new book. Hope it
Thank you.
gets
Thank you.
you and the readability of the, it gets a lot of readers. So thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation and enriching us.
My pleasure
So-
and duty always.
I would like to thank Professor Ganluiji and Sonu Kumar, as both of them I have observed. Professor Ganluiji has been a co-worker with us in all our webinars. That Sonu Kumar also joins most of our webinars. So thank you both. And I would also like to thank all our Facebook platform users and Zoom platform users for being present with us and learning. Thank you all. Pardon me if I have forgotten anybody's name. So, but really, I thank all of you from the bottom of my heart, and thank you all once again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ananta. Thank you, everyone.
And
This
just
opportunity.
one minute. Next Sunday, which is 20th of August, we are having a great thinker from Finland, Professor Heikki Patomäki. So he would speak with us. So on his new book on the world state. So let us, I would send you a note. Let us get ready for that and take our Vishwaneedam to new height and depth.
Thank
So
you.
Professor Ravindran, you join us next week.
Sure, sure,
Thank
sure,
you.
Ananta, sure. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. I'm disconnecting. Thank you. See you all.